Tim and Tamia Woods recently joined me at one of my online safety presentations.
These people are targeting our children.
I knew immediately that I had to get them on the podcast. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including my own, as Tim and Tamia shared the story of their son, James.
And people in the community of Streetsboro are grieving tonight.
Their only child, James Woods, died by suicide at age 17 as the result of social media sextortion. In this episode, we talk all about who James was, resources that every parent needs to know about, the inaction of social media companies, and what they're now doing through the Do It for James Foundation. I hope you'll take the time to listen. And if it moves you, please share it. Tim and Tamia, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I first want to say just how honored I was to have the both of you join me at that speaking engagement in Cleveland, I guess about at least a month ago now. The way that you spoke about James and these topics so passionately and eloquently, it impacted every parent in that room. I don't think there was a dry eye in there, including my own. And I'm sure you heard from some of the people in that room, but I certainly did too, about the impact that you had on those families that were there that night. So I first want to just say, thank you for joining me. And if you would, take some time and share with our listeners the way that you did that night about who your son James was.
Well, let's see. So our son James, you already said he was our only child. So pretty much to us, he was everything to us. He was a guy who walked in and he was always smiling. He was happy to sit and talk with us every day. Just eating food. He's thank you, Mom. For the food.
Yes, he would thank us for ramen noodles. Jay, it was not that much effort, but
yeah,
he always was grateful.
He was a person who he cared about other people. So us doing our job, feeding and clothing them, he always thanked us for it. And it's something we have to do, but he looks at it like, hey, I guess he feels we don't have to do it. In his mind, I don't know why he would think that, but that's just him. He was a nice guy. He was caring. He didn't have any thoughts in his mind that were evil or insidious or anything. He was just a good-natured person. So people always noticed that he was smiling and laughing and joking all the time, trying to cheer people up. He was just a person that was always appeared to be in a good mood. And he tried to make sure that everybody else was in a good mood when he was around. He always said thank you. He always, opened doors for people. He tried to cut his neighbor's yard for free. It's all these different things. He tutored some of his friends in school in their geometry homework. And he was just a really good person. And on top of all of that, he was a good athlete. They counted on him to go out and get points for him every track meet. He was a person who liked hanging out with his friends, playing basketball. He always ran around the block, just for cross country to get stronger cardiovascularly. But he joined the team and he made new friends there. He made friends everywhere he went. So on top of him being a nice, funny person who was outgoing and he was a true extrovert. He got that from his mom. It was a good quality. he was just everything good about a person that you would want to see.
Yeah. As far as him being a kid, growing up, he was a kid. He had a lot of energy, and but he was extremely humble. He made sure that if we needed anything around the house, he helped us out. He made sure that he was there. And as a child of ours, he always asked how our day was too. It is something that I know I truly miss. he would say, "Hey, how was your day today?" And we would ask the same. We would, every Friday we would watch movies together because we tell him the movies of today is nothing like the 90s movies, and and we would always watch movies with him. He would joke around a lot. Tim and James always watched anime together, comic book movies, or read even comic books. Played chess. He loved chess as well. He was a chess player. And then for me, he just was my hangout buddy. He everywhere I went, he went for a long time. Tim had to work third shift and slept sometimes during the day. Yeah. And so it was just me and Jay a lot. But that was my buddy, my traveling buddy. We would go a lot of places and do a lot of things, and truly enjoyed what I say. I truly enjoyed the 17 and a half years that God allowed us to borrow his angel. He just was a wonderful...
It was a good 17 years, too.
Wonderful kid.
He is I remember most of the time when I come home on Saturdays from work, like, all right, Dad, before you start playing your games, he'd tell me about this new anime that came out, and he was like, hey, you gotta check it out. And he started going through the characters and all their special abilities and whatnot. I'm like, I miss those talks.
Yes. Or like one time, the one and only time he applied for a job. He told me, he called me up. He said, Mom, I talked to Meg and Jordan, and I'm going to apply to Dairy Queen. And I said, okay, James, okay, let's practice. We got to practice with your interview. He said, no, I got this. I said, oh, okay. then he gets home and said, James, how did your interview go? And he said, I think it went pretty good. I said, okay, well, you run track. What did you tell him your availability was? And he said, well, I told him I can't work on Tuesdays because that's my dad's only day off and I need time with him. And Thursdays was track meet day. And on weekend is his me time. And I said, James, you're not going to get hired. And he definitely did not get hired.
Yeah, they did not call him back.
That's hilarious.
Poor kid.
That's hilarious. You two do such a great job. I mean, I felt after that event and as well as right now, just you feel like that I knew your son. And I think that speaks a lot to who he was, but also who the two of you are, and just the way that you're able to share him with the world even after his death, I think is so special and so beautiful. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Not a problem.
Not a problem. In order for you to really, truly understand our story, you also have to understand who we are. Sure. And how we came about being the Woods family. And although our story is sad, we want you to be able to really take a few moments and memories. It allows us to keep him alive as well.
That's right.
So thank you for allowing us to share him with you.
Well, of course. And so if you don't mind, share with our listeners what happened to James in November of 2022.
James was contacted by a young woman on Instagram, direct messaging. And it was somebody he never met before. He never saw her picture before. He didn't know anything about this person. She contacted him. They started messaging each other back and forth inside the Instagram app. And eventually they got on video camera together. And after they got on video camera together, some words were exchanged and they exposed themselves in a sexual manner to each other on this video feed. The person took screenshots from the video and then began to blackmail him, threaten him saying, hey, we're going to expose you to the world. We're sharing your picture with everybody. They started telling him how, and I said they, but she started telling him how she was going to ruin his life and all the different ways that it was going to affect them. And they did this for a number of hours, and then eventually she started saying how she wanted money. They started at $6,000, and then they settled at $300. And I know they knew that he didn't have that kind of money, because they talked about his job and him not working, him being a school student. They knew everything about him because he was talking to this young woman, and they pretty much told each other everything about who they were.
Yep.
So I believe it was part of their tactic to just instill that fear. They settled on $300. He paid them a little bit over $100 because that's all he had in cash. And from there, they just wanted the rest of their money. So they just kept bugging them, message after message after message. We're going to expose you. We're going to send your picture out to all your friends and family. You know, all the bad things that a person doesn't want to hear when they're in a bad situation.
And we're talking about $200 at this point is really what this came down to.
Yep, they wanted $300, and James ended up sending them a little over $100 and a couple of gift cards. They one thing that we always explained to James and told James: don't ever cash app anybody you didn't know, and don't ever send anyone your debit card information. And so I think during that point it kind of restricted him even more, in a sense where he's like, okay, how do I get them to leave me alone? And that opened him up to be groomed on them telling him, go and get an iTunes gift card. And he purchased that with the cash that he had on hand. And then they video messaged him again to get the number off, and then groomed him into getting rid of that gift card. We never found that gift card to be able to trace that portion of it.
Well, and I think beyond you saying that to him preemptively, they also do that. They like things that are very hard to trace. That's why they're able to keep. You know, they often ask people for iTunes gift cards or Visa gift cards or things like that because they are harder to trace.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have taken Cash App, though. They
Yes.
did state that.
And we did later on, and we can get to that too. But later on, they did try to extort us as well, and that is how we were able to get their Cash App that they had.
Okay, so they came to you after he died?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't necessarily come to us. We went to them.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So that evening, it's Saturday evening, the police, they came, they did their investigation, everybody left. Now it's just Tamia and myself at home. We start going through the phone records to see who was in James' life that we don't know, so that we could see if we could find the link to what happened.
So you had a hunch immediately that this involved the phone in some way?
We just
Well, we didn't know. We were just looking for anything.
Anything, right.
because James didn't have any depression issues.
He was a
that
happy
we
kid,
were
right? Like you
aware
said in the
of.
beginning.
Yeah, he didn't have any signs of suicide, like how they talk about red flags with suicide or depression. He didn't have any of those things. So we were trying to figure out, like, what happened? What did we miss? And so we were really desperate in finding anything. And that night, the police had James' phone. So it was Tim's idea to actually just pull up the phone records. And that's what we did. And we were very close with James and his closest friends, the ones that he talked to a lot. So it was, we're even on a group chat, because Tim and I would always take him and his friends on trips every year and different things like that. So we had their phone numbers. So we were just looking for a number that stood out to us, and we were able to easily find that.
Yeah.
What happened then? Once you found the number, what was the next step?
So when we found that number, we called it to see who it was. And they answered the phone initially, and they hung it right back up. So we was like, all right, wait a minute. Is this the number that we should be concerned with or not?
Yeah,
But
I was very like I'm dating myself, Ben. So I I was like, oh well, it is midnight. Maybe this person has a phone curfew. I'm thinking back to when I was a teenager. My mom, get off that phone, or you know. But I forgot kids have
their own phones
their own
now.
phones
So-
now. In that moment, I forgot. Like, so I'm still being, courteous. Like, oh man, maybe they shouldn't be on the phone. And then they texted us and said, cannot talk, text me.
Yeah, and then we asked them, who is this? And then that's when they sent us a picture of our son, the same picture that they was going to use to send out to the world. And we was like, oh, okay, so we found the right number. We
And
just
this
don't
was
know who-
this was from his phone or from your personal phone?
our
Our
own personal
Okay.
phone.
Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah, because right at this time, the police have his phone in
Sure.
their custody,
Yep.
and they're going through it, trying to find out everything they can. Because this was shortly
That's
after 12
not-
p.m.
yeah,
I mean,
and
12
noon-
a.m.
Or
I mean.
a.m. I said noon.
Yeah, so they're
AM.
at that time they were going through the phone, and they literally went through everything because they gave it back to us Sunday morning at like 7 in the morning.
In the morning. So this was between, the time that they left, and once they left, we were just. I mean, that's just who we are as parents. We're going to figure out. Because I always would tell James, if he was sad one day or something, who's messing with my baby? I will knock them out. Who's messing with my baby? And we truly meant that. Like we had.
I believe you.
We had James back 100%. So we were trying to figure out like where was the disconnect, and even it hurts my soul because I even begged the police officer. I said, you tell me where we went wrong. You tell me. I said, I have to know because, we provided him a 2-parent household. We made sure that he was good. We told him we loved him every day. We gave him hugs. When he had meets, we were there. If we couldn't be there, we were on the phone with each other. Like one of us was there. We always asked him, how was he? How are you doing today? When he had a problem, we talked him through that problem. And yet we weren't allowed that. We weren't allowed to protect our son in whatever manner. And suicide, it just wasn't, it didn't seem right. Like we wouldn't have felt that James would just go and do this without talking to us or saying something. We were with him for that same day. I mean, I know that his parents supposed to be with him, but like we literally went. Tim went to work that day, had a 20-minute conversation with James. Talked about. Well, I can't speak for you, but
That Saturday morning, I had to be to work at 5 a.m. And I had woke up at 4, took a shower, got dressed, came downstairs so I could get my stuff ready for work and leave. And that's when I saw my son sitting at the island here. He had his phone in his hand, fully dressed, wide awake, eating a bowl of cereal. I was like, hey, James, and I talked to him because that day, I mean, I would have talked to him anyways, but that particular day, he was on his way to a conference with his mom. They were going to pick out what school he was going to go to. It was the HBCU fair. And I told him, all the good things. Hey, talk to everybody, see what they got to offer. You might find a school you like better. Talk to the people about a fraternity. All these different things. I told him pretty much have fun, enjoy the day. Told him I was proud of him. And we just sat there talking. And I was telling him how he's doing things I never did. It was just a good conversation, a father-son conversation. And he never mentioned anything about what was going on at this point, about what was happening between him and the person on Instagram.
Yeah.
So it was a big shock to find out that after I got home from work that he wasn't alive anymore.
Yeah. And that's the same with me. Like we were at the college fair. We had fun. We were dancing. I even get the memory every year because I posted the band, And I said I was trying to teach James how to have some fun and listen to, the band and different things like that. And at that time, I did separate from him. So I went to brunch with my cousin and my aunt. And the reason why I was comfortable leaving James was because he was still at the college fair, but me being a mother and sometimes I'm controlling, I did not want to pick his college for him. And so I stepped away. His principal was still there. His best friends were still there. So I stepped away thinking, he was in a safe space and he could honestly choose the college that he wanted and not that I wanted. And that's how we separated. But even then, after that, he called to check in with me. And he told me the 3 colleges that he was interested in going to, and it was Fisk, Howard, and Central State. He explained to me that he was interested in joining a fraternity. And that was at 1:28 p.m. And I said, I'm so proud. I knew you could do it. I heard a smile in his voice. I mean, he chuckled, he smiled, and I said, we'll talk about it more when we get home. And we didn't get that chance.
Yeah, life sucks.
Yeah, I'm very sorry for your loss, and I mean, I can't even imagine, and that's why I try to help tell these stories in any way that I can, because for every family like you who's willing to so courageously share their worst moment, there are thousands of other families who have gone through or will go through what you've experienced. And so that's why it's so important, and that I admire you guys so much for doing this stuff in person and online, and really anyone who will listen. It is so important. And so had you heard of sextortion before this happened to your son?
No. We haven't.
James was actually one of the first victims of financial sextortion, so it was like just coming out.
Yep.
And I remember when they told us what James was a victim of, we tried to Google like what exactly is this, and I think it took us 10 pages through Google before we found an article.
Couldn't find nothing.
Yeah.
Well, and thankfully that's starting to change now, and it's on the front page, the first thing, and the first 10 pages are all these things, and that's in large part due to people like you who are willing to share these stories. And so I think that's true for most every parent that I know, and unfortunately it's a lot of them at this point, who have lost a child as a result of sextortion. They had never heard of it before it happened through no fault of their own. And so, obviously you're talking to the press and to people like me, and you're also speaking in schools as I do. I'm curious, when you try to take this message to schools, do you ever get pushback from administration about having these conversations about, nude photos and videos, or using the word sex in some way? And do you get pushback, and what would you say to that?
In the beginning,
Yep.
we did. Now it's. I mean, they have questions. Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, we did have pushback a lot, and that was because it was still something that was new. But today, we don't necessarily get as much pushback, but some schools, like Catholic schools, a few of them did have reservations about what our message was that we was going to be telling.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Like, they don't, when we first started this, they were saying, talked about suicide contagion. And I'm like, what the heck is suicide contagion? But I think it's the way that we approach things.
Yeah.
And honestly, Ben, which is so One, I don't have words to describe our presentation, because although our story is sad, the presentation is beautiful in itself.
It is. I mean, it just in the 15 or 20 minutes you spoke at that event, it really was. And I've told everyone who will listen since that day just what a wonderful job you did. Not just sharing your story, but I mean, obviously everyone who's watched it this far has already heard the story and they know that, but also describing these dangers and how you parented your child in all the ways, and you were having the right conversations, doing the right things. I think that's the hardest part with all of this stuff is, with the run, we had the names on the back of that RV, which you all saw, and it's like, what are the common themes? And the only one, there were two. One, they involved smartphones and social media, and two, they were all good kids from good families, just like your son. Their parents were having every conversation that they knew to have. And thankfully, people are starting to become more aware of sextortion, both that this is what it is, but also what to do if it happens. I spoke last week. I know you guys know Brad and Carrie Bettler.
Yeah.
They're from a small town in Missouri. They lost their son to sextortion. Very similar story. 2 hours after the first message he ever received from this teenage girl, this predator pretending to be a teenage girl. And so anyway, I went to their town in Missouri last week, and I did a presentation. And it was to their son's classmates, the high school, the middle school, and then they did an evening parent event. Brad and Carrie spoke very eloquently, the way that you two do as well. And they shared about their son and sextortion. And actually, the Secret Service had sent 2 agents from Dallas. They were ambassadors for NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Mm-hmm. And so they had driven 6 hours each way to be there. They had student-led mental health groups there. They had their victim advocates, the prosecutor's office. And it was just this small town of, probably 7,000 or 8,000 people, rural Missouri. And the whole town showed up for it. And it was just so, it's horrible that events like that have to happen. But it was also just beautiful in the way that everyone kind of came together. There were people wearing the Evans Voice, that's the nonprofit that they created, the shirts, and people wearing the people had followed my run across the country, and so they're showing up in the Keep Kids Safe Online Tracy Trek t-shirts as well. And it was just so meaningful. But there's still this sometimes it's like, it is hard to share these stories. And I find myself often wondering, is it worth it to spend 200 nights a year in hotels? And, half these parents you get, you promote it and then you get 50 parents there. It's like, is it making a difference? And as many people as we reach or lives we save, we don't think about the ones we reach. We think about the ones that we didn't, or at least I do. And I had a student reach out to me 2 days after, and I'll spare the details just because I'm sure some of these people will watch this, but from that town. And he reached out to me on Instagram, and it was like a Friday. I'd been speaking all week. I'd been on the road. I was frustrated and tired. And, it's hard to have these conversations every day. And so I'm at the airport. I'm flying home from, where was I? Columbia, South Carolina. And as I'm boarding the airplane, I get a message from this kid, said, "Hey, I'm being sextorted. I had the same thing that happened to Evan. It's happening to me right now. Can you help me?" And so I walk him, through Instagram direct message. I'm not law enforcement. You're not law enforcement, but inevitably, he came to me. And so, I'm trying to message him as fast as I can before I lose the Wi-Fi. And I'm like, I really hope this kid doesn't harm himself between now and when I get to 10,000 feet and can connect to the Wi-Fi again. And I'm, take a deep breath, call your mom, go to the police, get screenshots, all these things. And, thankfully the kid didn't harm himself. And it's like that's why we do this. That's why we have those conversations. And he knew what to do in that moment because he'd heard from me, he'd heard from Brad and Carrie, he'd heard from the Secret Service. He knew this wasn't a taboo topic in his school. And so that's a kid who, I don't know what would have happened, but ultimately it's possible that he may have harmed himself in some way. And so I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations. And, I just want you guys to know that you are making a difference with sharing these stories. And I heard from so many people after the presentation that we did in Cleveland saying, this made it easier for me to have a conversation with my own child, because it was very obvious that Tim and Tamia are great people and they were raising their child in the right way. And so I just think it's so important, the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you. And likewise, we cannot be everywhere one time, even though you were all over the country running. It's still so many people who I think don't quite know exactly what sextortion is, or they think sometimes it's an easy fix. Like we talk about how easily kids can become groomed in a matter of minutes, and the statistics behind that, or sometimes parents think, well, my kid will always come to me, they always have. And we sometimes ask that question too. Like James came to us for everything, so we had no reason on why he wouldn't come to us. But we have to go out there, we have to speak, and we have to talk to our kids. And we don't mind being that additional voice, because sometimes, especially teenagers, they think they know everything, or they think that their parents are making up a story, because it seems fake. It seems fake, doesn't it, Ben? It's like fake. And for a while, I thought, I'm like, oh, okay, joke's over. Bring my son back. It seemed fake to me. So it's easy to just disregard what people are saying. But I tell them all the time, you have a privilege to talk to your children about sextortion. We didn't get that privilege.
And what would you say? What would you say to a child who might find himself in the same situation that James was in? What would you say to that child if you could, if you had a minute with him?
Well, I would tell anybody, if it's a person who hasn't been involved in it yet, I would tell them, don't send any pictures of yourself to anyone. Even if it's somebody you know, don't do it. I would say don't do any live feeds or video calls or anything where you're exposing yourself. Even if it's somebody you know, don't do it. Because you never know who has what in their hearts, right? You might see a person, they might smile in your face, talk to you, but at the end of the day, you don't know if they have your best interest in mind. So you can't just trust people. So I would tell them, be cautious of everybody you come across, especially on the internet, because you don't know who they are. Now, your people that you do know, even still, don't expose yourself. You're too young for that. It's time down the road for all of the adult stuff. You're still a kid. Live a kid's life. Leave all that to the people who created you. And I would leave it at that.
But if you do,
the other side of the coin.
There's always a way out. And you may be embarrassed. You may be like, well, I knew about it. How did I fall for this? Or, you have a lot of questions in your mind. But we want kids to truly understand that the people who are targeting you all, they know what they're doing. They know what to say to manipulate you into doing what they want to have done. And if that is the case, if you do run into that situation, please speak out. We tell people all the time, it doesn't matter what mistake, what bad decision, whatever you may think is going on in your head right now, you matter enough to speak up and to tell somebody about the situation you're going through. That's why we give out the tip cards. It has the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's information directly on there. You all have resources, and we're here to fight your back. And Ben, you, myself, Tim, we're all additional resources to help you guys get out of the situation you're in. But the first thing that you have to do is actually speak up and say something, and then we can get right into action. You deserve all of that and more.
Yeah, because I tell kids all the time, You're in a position where someone is taking advantage of you. You want it to stop. All you have to do is put yourself in another position where you're asking for help. So if you're going through something, find a trusted adult, say, hey, this is what's going on, can you help me? And chances are, I'm sure those people that they go to is someone they really like, someone that they really look at as someone who they could believe in. That person is going to help them. All they have to do is be vulnerable one more time and just ask for that help. It's a real simple thing to do. People just have to build that extra courage to ask.
Yeah, well, and courage is contagious, and the two of you have it, and you've done an amazing job of getting this out there. And so about speaking up and taking action, talk to me about the Do It for James Foundation and what you're doing through that.
So originally, we were just two parents trying to fight for our child, and we were also scared for the next child, the next parent. So James were contacted on November 18th. He died on November 19th. We found out what happened to James on November 20th, and November 21st we were in schools.
Wow.
We were.
That's amazing.
It was originally who's next. We still didn't know quite what sextortion was.
So 72, sorry to cut you, 72
Yes.
hours after this had happened, you're speaking in front of an audience.
Oh yeah, and
God bless you.
It was James' teammate, so it was at Streetsboro High School, and it was with the all of the cross country and track students. It was about 150 people right there, and
It was a pack.
It was packed. Yes, and we had to do it. It was for a number of things. One, we didn't know who was next. Two, they did start sending pictures of James to his friends and family, so we didn't know who received it, who didn't, and they started asking them for money. But then also they created an additional, a couple of additional targets in regards to that too.
Okay.
So we had to speak out. We also felt like the situation needed to be talked about. Forget suicide contagion or all these other things. We had to speak life into them kids. We had to make sure that they knew that it was not their fault. It was nothing that they did. And the last thing that we wanted them to ever do was take their life. That is the last thing that we should ever hear about anybody doing when they're put into a circumstance like James. And that's what we did. It was extremely emotional. I yelled for the next year and a half at kids. But I wanted to make sure, and Tim wanted to make sure, that we didn't have another victim. And so when we did that, it was 4 or 5 other kids that...
It was 4 different kids that came forth after we got done talking.
After we talked, and they went straight to the police. And literally one of the kids, the people were FaceTiming them. They FaceTimed them in the precinct. So it gets really scary, and when we did that, and then when we heard the feedback from Chief Wayne and the superintendent, and we did a joint press release all within a week, and some people blamed us for it. They tried to put James' death on us. They said that we didn't create a safe space for our son. He shared himself online, so he deserved it. I mean, it was so many evil things. But through all of that, it was so many kids who thanked us. Some of our kids that we speak to directly are our biggest advocates, and they refer us to the next school, into the next school. And that is how we all came about. We started speaking to everyone. We started originally our foundation on January 13th, 2023. And in February, we spoke to every head sheriff in the state of Ohio for each county. We started talking to the FBI. We're a part of their program every year, where we speak to the kids directly. I mean, we just started looking at it like putting people in place to not only be aware of it, start having conversations about it, but then the people who respond know how to properly respond and give them the help that they need, and are aware of it. And that's what we do, and we will continue to do. And of course, our foundation will continue to grow and do, and we can touch on different topics like we already have. We talk about it if you're ever touched inappropriately, molested, raped. If there's a strong connection between cyber enticement, sextortion, and human trafficking that is going on. We try to make people aware of everything and what to look for, and we ask them to just have a conversation. And we can truly tell you that conversation alone has saved many lives. That conversation alone has helped. We've had influence on capturing 3 pedophiles, and they're investigating another one. We've had help where we've saved even people who weren't in the same situation as James, but they were having suicidal thoughts, and we were able to talk them out of it. I mean, it's so many different things that, although unfortunately we weren't able to save James, and I desperately wish that we would have been able to, through James. James is a busy man up there. And he's helping save so many other lives, and that is with the Do It For James Foundation. So to end it off, and because I know I talk a lot.
We got all day. We can go as long as you want. I know people listening to this are going to be wanting more. I mean, this is such great information that you're sharing, and work that you're doing. And so you're doing a lot of different things. One more thing that I would like to touch on too is, we've talked about this from the school's perspective, from the parents' perspective, the kids themselves before and during, if they find themselves in a situation like this. But you've also been active on the legislative side. You really have been talking to truly anyone who will listen, young, old, and everywhere in between. And so if you would take a second and talk about legislation. I think there was a law passed recently in the state of Ohio related to sextortion. So, I know we'll have some elected officials who will listen to this. Will you talk a little bit specifically about Braden's Law and what that does, as well as any other legislation that you may want to share with our listeners?
Yes, so initially we had tried to pass a law ourselves, or backed Lieutenant Governor John Husted
in 2023.
He's a senator now.
Okay.
But that was the Social Media Parental Act, and what that was doing was any social media in the state of Ohio, in order for a child under the age of 16 to use their platform, they would have to get parental consent in order to do so. It passed unanimously across the board for the state of Ohio, but then NetChoice, who represents Metaverse, Snapchat, all of them, had came and sued the state of Ohio and was able to successfully get that to stop from moving forward.
And to be clear, NetChoice is funded, and they're a front group for the big tech companies. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So a lot of parents think that that Meta is their friend, that Instagram is their friend, that they negotiate in good faith because they'll see things like the Instagram parental controls or the school partnership. And so are those real solutions that help keep kids safe, or are those public relations campaigns? Because it seems to me that they're the latter.
I think it's the latter.
I think so too. Because you can't say you're for it, and that you can't say you're for keeping kids safe. While they know this, this stuff is not all that hard to remove, especially with AI. Other apps are doing it very successfully, and so they know that there are predators on their platform. They know that there are drug dealers on their platform, and so while they can say that they're rolling out parental controls or school partners, they're also funding these front groups, and they're funding lobbyists to lobby against legislation like that, the Kids Online Safety Act. Really anything that would keep kids safe. They're doing that. So they're on the front end and on the back end. So I don't know how you can say you're taking these steps when you're also fighting it on the other side, right? There's this public face and then what they're actually doing behind
Correct.
the scenes.
And it's a number of things. So like, first of all, James was being tortured for 19 and a half hours. And in those messages, he did tell him that he was going to take his own life. He said, I'm going to kill myself. And they said, do it. And at that point in time, Instagram did have a chance to go in, whether it's direct message or not, to go in and shut the page down. They have access to do it, just like how they're listening to us right now. We're going to get 10 ads on the same things that we're talking about. So with that being said, I do think that they definitely have the capabilities of seeing these types of things and preventing them. Is there a chance that does it help? I'm not going to say that having these parental options for Instagram and Facebook and Messenger and all of that doesn't help. It definitely helps, but it's not the solution. I think it's just a Band-Aid. It's just to get people to be quiet about it. But when I look at it and you look at all of these plays in motion, even with that, if you put that into our situation, James would have still passed. Apple alone has never reported, and I gotta look, I haven't looked in this past year or made sure of this stat, but I know when the first 1.5 years that we were talking, Apple never reported any kind of child predatory reports at all. Never did, not one. You have Google, who will message our kids directly and say, congratulations on turning 13. You now no longer need parental controls. Click here to opt out. So it is a lot of fluff that's going on here, because at the same time we're allowing and providing us the problem, saying, well, here's parental controls, but then you turn around and you go behind our backs and say, hey kid, did you know that you don't need parental controls? That's exactly what's happening. With in regards to Braden's law, it's a wonderful act that was passed. Jennifer Marcus, who is Braden's mother, and her husband had, that was their initial initiative. So just a quick story about Braden. Braden is also a victim of sextortion. He died in October of 2021. The family, Jennifer and her husband, had went on and dealt with 10 months of not knowing what exactly went wrong with their kid, and they could not get access to their phone because Apple was actually refusing to give them access, stating that it had privacy laws, and they wanted a subpoena, and then still they wasn't going to unlock his phone. So what they in turn did, and they got a military person to be able to hack into his phone. They had 3 chances left before a factory reset. That took a long time. They didn't really get a chance to really find out exactly what happened to Braden until November 2022. November 2022 is when James passed. If they would have been able to know, we do also feel like James would have been here. Because Jennifer actually lives in the Columbus area. I'm born and raised in Columbus. I have friends, teachers, principals, all of that. With that being said, the Braden's law is a combination of two. So what it does is it relinquishes any ability to sue the phone company for any privacy violations if the can you get the charger, Tim? It's in there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
But it actually relinquishes the right for the parent to sue if they violate any kind of privacy laws, or anyone to sue if they violate any privacy laws, which then gives the parents the capability of actually finding out and looking through their kid's phone and what exactly happened with their kid. The other portion of it is a more aggressive law, or aggressive charge if they were actually convicted of performing the act of sextortion. Then we basically made it a a law to sue or to charge them with the more aggressive years, and then if there is a death that was that was actually incorporated in that they would actually get a more aggressive charge when it comes to that as well.
Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you and to Jennifer Marcus and everyone else who was involved. And some of these steps, sometimes it feels like, well, we need to do more and more and more. But a state doing anything is a great start, and that's more than many states are doing, especially on this topic of sextortion. So that's great to hear. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different things. Just kind of to wrap up, how do people find the Do It for James Foundation? Can they donate? Can they bring you in to speak? What events do you have coming up? I know one I'm going to be a part of is the 5K. I'm going to come and bring at least one guy who was with me on the run. I don't know that he ran 3 miles the whole time I was running across the country, but hopefully we can get him to do the 5K. We're planning to come up there this summer. And it's so interesting is not to make this about myself, but that I was a sprinter in college, and then I became a distance runner and the run across the country, very similar to James. And actually the first online safety presentation that I ever did was to my own college track teammates. Wow. The athletic director sat in on it and said, hey, this is 8 years ago, right? He's like, I think there's probably some demand for this. And then I started going to other college athletic departments and then high schools and middle schools, and it kind of just snowballed from there. So we're very similar in that way and kind of where this all started. And both of us, we're just getting started on this mission, and we're helping people, but we have a long ways to go. And so how do people find the work that you're doing or donate to the foundation or join at one of the events coming up?
Well, let's see. There's a number of ways. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook, Do It for James Foundation. That's one way. Or you could go to our website, is letsdifj.org. So it's letsdoitforjames.org. You could go in there. There's everything that we do. We try to take pictures of it and post it on there so that people can actually see what it is that we're doing in the community. And everything is broken up into pictures, events, it's all kinds of stuff on there. We got news clippings. Even our very first news clipping we did, there was a woman from Lindsay from Channel 3 News. And that's when we first stated that we were going to start this nonprofit foundation. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Well, you're definitely getting the word out there. I was doing that presentation in Cleveland, and I told the principal I spoke to the kids during the school day, and I said to the principal, I've got a family coming tonight. They lost their son to sextortion. They go, oh, is it Tim and Tamia Woods? They've been everywhere. Everybody knows them and their story, and I think this is an important thing. Like, you don't want to be known. Like, this wasn't. You're not. No one in this space wants to do this necessarily, right? We're not. Nobody's looking for notoriety. They're not trying to become a well-known person. They just want to get these stories out there, and I think that's important for people to realize. Like, we're all advocates on accident. And so, the best thing for me is that my speaking business would go out of business. The best thing for you is that the Do It for James Foundation would cease to exist, because that would mean that these problems were solved. But right now they're not being solved, right? But we're trying to help solve them. And so I think that's why it's so important what you're doing. And so I would encourage people to go on and to follow them on social media. Do It for James Foundation on Facebook and Instagram. Check out their website, share their resources. I know you have a ton of sextortion and cyberbullying and exploitation resources on your website. And then briefly, just to wrap up, talk about the 5K that I'm gonna be part of as well, coming up this summer.
The 5K this year, it'll be July 19th. It starts at about 10 o'clock in the morning, depending on registration and whatnot. It's a beautiful event. We get everyone to come out. They start the day off. They line up. They run or walk, whichever choice you choose. And we don't tell people they have to do one or the other. And after they're done running, we hand them water, we take pictures with them, and then we move into the day of fun portion of the day. And we have a big open field. Everyone could go out. They could talk to the FBI. They could talk to ICAC, NECMEC, the CAC, all these different resources for mental health.
Crisis Center will be there.
It's a big, beautiful day.
Yeah.
Full of information.
It's full of information, but then we also have fun incorporated into that. So we have like game trucks, we have stilt walkers, jugglers, basketball, volleyball, food trucks coming out. Temporary tattoos. We have where we
can
dance.
Play tic-tac-toe,
yeah,
jelly
DJ,
ball.
Yes.
Play basketball or volleyball if you want.
Yes, it's just a good
eat pizza and snow cones.
Yes. Great time. And with that, and with the funds that we raise, so far the last 2 years that we've done it, we've been able to give away $25,000 in scholarships total.
Amazing.
So we're hoping to keep on and hopefully give away another at least 10 grand. We got a long way to go to raise money, but we'll get there.
The more registrants that we get, the bigger the scholarships that we can give out.
Yes.
So we have to tell people, come out, register. It's a $35 fee. It's not that much money. But the more people that come out, you're doing something to help our youth, to make the world a better place.
And if you cannot come, you can always, we'll be posting the sponsor letters and everything, and you can actually sponsor a kid. You can make donations.
You could, go to our website. You can make donations through there. There's an area where it says donate.
Yes. So we have a lot.
It's amazing, and I love what you're doing. You know, you're obviously having the hard conversations like this one, but you're also honoring James in such a beautiful way by making people smile and laugh and have fun and honor his legacy in both the difficult way, but also in the fun and beautiful way as well. And I think you do such a good job with that in your work through the foundation, as well as in your speech, and even in a conversation like this one we had today. So I'm so grateful to know the two of you, and I look forward to standing side by side as we try and get this message out any way possible moving forward. And we'll share in the notes of this, we'll share the Facebook and Instagram and website and the link to the 5K so that people can join or donate or utilize the resources that you've made available.
Yes, thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
One last thing, Ben.
Absolutely.
So we have it's 2 books coming out. One personal for Tim and I. We don't have the name for it just yet, but each chapter you get 2 different points of view. So you get Tim's point of view and my point of view within each chapter. So we have that. We also have another book that's coming out. We're actually going to be posting it as soon as we get off the phone with you. A call for submission. So we're asking for either a poem or a letter, and it's dedicated to mental health. So whether it's addressing depression or your take, where it's grief or suicide or sextortion, whatever comes to your heart, you can write a letter or a poem on that. And the event is called Poetry on Purpose. So that is our book. And that will
November 15th.
November 15th, we will actually have the poetry reading where some of the poets will come out. We'll have a live jazz band and officially release the book at that point as well. And so half of the proceeds for the book goes back to the Do It for James Foundation, and that helps to keep us moving and spreading the word and doing wonderful events to keep spreading love and making sure that people really truly understand that they matter.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to do this today.
You're very
thank you for
welcome.
having us.
Thank you for having us, Ben.